I've been a student and a player of the game for over 50 years and a full-time teacher and coach for the last 3.5 decades. I think what's interesting about the Peluva Golf Shoe is it's basically how our feet are designed to function. I am a believer in metrics and in stats. So here's one. All of us on the planet that play golf, we take 75% of our shots from 60 yards and less. We know this. You guys have known this since day one. A lot of people are going to say, I'm never going to wear that shoe because it looks funny.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back a few years in golf. So it wasn't that long ago that everybody wore wool jackets and ties to play golf.
Right. Hey, I'm Kyle Sisson, co-founder of Peluva, and I'm here with Christopher Smith, a man of many talents. Christopher, let's just start. Why don't you give me a little bit of background about, who you are, your journey, and potentially why we're sitting here together.
Yeah, pleasure to be here with you. Well, I've been a student and a player of the game for over 50 years and a full-time teacher and coach for the last 3.5 decades. I'm a PGA Master Professional in Teaching and Coaching. I'm the Director of Instruction at Eugene Country Club in Eugene, Oregon, and at Puerto Los Cabos Golf Club in Baja, Mexico. Long-time aficionado of how important footwear is to golf performance. And so thrilled to have discovered and be helping out with this, with the Peluva version of the golf shoe, because it's so important to playing better golf. And that's what I've done for a living. And it's my passion in helping people play better. So
that's right. So let's talk a little bit about, how we came across you. Obviously, with what you've mentioned, you are an expert in golf and golf instruction, right? So, golf is a huge passion of mine. I'd say my number one hobby.
Yeah.
With Peluva, we set out recently, maybe almost about a year ago, we said, Peluva, the concept behind it would make for a great golf shoe. So we started prototyping, and at that moment we realized we need an expert on our side, right? Because I love golf, I love Peluva. I think I can get, pretty far with a shoe that's going to help me play golf. But we really felt like we needed someone who really knew the game, really knew the mechanics of a golf swing and what goes into, like you said, the importance of footwear in golf. So at that point, we started to search the internet, and we came across you as someone who, like you said, was a PGA master golf coach and teacher, and someone who understood all those things. And we reached out to you, and luckily you had an interest. So let's talk a little bit about that interest, because when we initially reached out, you had a prior engagement with another company, and you had been working on footwear for Speedgolf, right?
Well, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your background in Speedgolf and what Speedgolf is for those who don't know about it.
Yeah, so Speedgolf is basically it's a niche sport within a niche sport. People think golf is a niche sport. So Speedgolf's a wacky sport that I've played for the last 30 years or so, where you actually run in between shots, and then you keep your time and your score. So if you shoot, for example, a score of 80 in 60 minutes, your total is 140. And I set the Guinness World Record in this niche sport back in 2005, where I shot 65 in 44 minutes.
Wow.
With just 6 clubs. And so it's become a passion of mine, a hobby of mine. I've actually used some of the concepts from speed golf to help people in what I like to call slow golf, which is traditional golf, where intuitively and instinctively and a little less deliberately, really tapping into the human system, mind, body, brain, you can play better golf. And so working on, all different aspects of performance, when you're running between shots, obviously your footwear is important, but then also when you're, the interesting thing is when you're playing normal golf, you're maybe out there for 4.5 hours, you're walking anywhere from 3 to 5 miles, and you're spending most of your time walking and standing.
Right.
And what I still find odd, is most golf shoes are not designed for that. They're designed for these little bursts of movement, a lot of full swing stuff that really only, takes up maybe just less than 1% of the total time.
Right.
So I think what's interesting about the Peluva golf shoe is it's basically how our feet are designed to function, allows for a lot more ankle mobility. So I think not only from just how we're swinging, which is important to performance. Again, I'm all about getting people better at golf, but how we're feeling, overall balance, overall efficiency. And then at the end of the day, I consider myself a performance coach.
Yeah.
People coming to me, they want to get better.
Right.
And so this is part of the puzzle.
Yeah. So one of the things that was so cool to me about the blending of Peluva and golf is our big thing with Peluva is getting people to walk more.
Yeah.
Right? And the importance of walking and how valuable it is to overall health, right?
Yeah.
And golf is arguably one of the most, it's probably the sport with the most walking, right? I mean, when you play a round of golf, like you said, you could walk. I mean, if you play it well, maybe 3 miles, but a lot of times, you know, you'd be walking 7 miles, right?
For sure.
And you know, you're, like you said, you're on your feet a lot. So for us, this idea that a sport that involves so much walking, but also so much feel, so much balance, all the things that we talk about for Peluva and all of the shoes that we built, you know, this is the perfect sort of relationship, the perfect marriage between Peluva, the brand, and golf.
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting for me. Like I said, a huge hobby of mine is to play golf. And to chase down basically making what I would consider sort of the perfect golf shoe, right? So when we set out on this journey, you know, I didn't really know, I knew what I wanted out of a shoe, right? I wanted a shoe that, one, I wasn't going to lose any performance in. And I was still going to be able to perform. And I wanted a shoe that was comfortable. I was always kicking off my shoes at the end of a golf round going, oh my God, I can't wait to get these off. These hurt my feet. I don't like them at all, right? And I wanted a shoe that I would be willing to leave on after the golf round. And then I wanted a shoe that I could get a lot of feel from the course, because golf is such an intuitive sport where you really are, you know, you're not playing on a court that's the same size every single time. You are in a constant battle with nature, right? And you're in a battle with the forces of the earth. Whether it's, you know, you got gravity and you're playing on a hill and you got all these things. So a shoe that can connect you more to nature, it just seems to me is obvious that that's what we need, right? So when we found you, we started asking you questions, and some of the questions were, well, what do we need in a golf shoe, right? And from your perspective, you know, what were some of those things that you came back to us and said, you know, here's actually what's important in golf footwear?
Yeah, I think the big part, like you just hit on it, one of them is like when you play golf, it's utter chaos. It's a giant adventure, and you're out in a big park.
Right.
It's funny because when you watch people practice, they're usually practicing on a flat, level surface. We were out earlier today, you know, people hitting off a mat. That's not golf. And one of the things I see as a teacher where people struggle with is when they go to play, okay, so you hit your tee shot and it's level and flat. But then after that, you're always standing on your head, as we like to say. So you've got some kind of weird slope or weird lie, so to speak. And you have to be able to assess that and make the necessary adjustments.
Right.
So the closer your feet are to the ground and the more balanced you are, the easier and more natural that is to be able to assess it. Say, hey, this ball is, you know, above my feet, below my feet, uphill, downhill. And then you can make the necessary adjustments. Because I see a lot of players, you know, when I'm teaching and coaching, they actually don't look at, I said, did you notice that slope?
Right.
Did you notice the wind? But did you notice that you weren't on a level piece of the planet Earth? And if you don't notice that, then you can't make the adjustment, and your result's probably not going to be what it is. So I think there was that. I think the other thing that I've explored over the years is people think, well, I need this bulky, stable platform to create more speed, more vertical forces, more ground reaction force, blah, 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 which is a very hot topic in golf swing and golf instruction now. I don't find that to be true for most people. So I've tested a lot of stuff myself barefoot with other, you know, pieces of footwear. And then I see these clunky, they're almost like ski boots that some people wear and have worn that are restricting the ankles, reducing mobility, and putting your feet to sleep, when really what we need is the feet alive and active because of that highway. It's like an Autobahn going between the feet and the brain, and the brain is running the whole show. As I like to tell people, it's all an inside job. Right. So when you're swinging, you know, thought preceding action. Or motion. So these are all aspects to putting something on your feet that are actually going to help in so many different ways, let alone just comfort. Like everybody wants comfort.
Of course.
But people also want to shoot low scores.
Right. So
performance.
So one of the things, one of our biggest goals was, okay, if we're going to take away all of these sort of traditional aspects of golf shoes, we want to basically add the most amount of comfort and feel and being able to sense the ground while not removing those parts that people always want, which is, you know, swing speed and,
Yeah.
and distance,
Yeah.
those sorts of things, right? But when you start to think of it a little more, one of the things that I like to say is you would never design a basketball shoe that's meant for shooting free throws, because basketball
Yeah.
is a comprehensive game, right? And the same thing goes for golf. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not one type of shot. So the fact that people focus so much on, for example, the tee shot, like how much can I get off? How much distance can I get off the tee, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows the famous saying, drive for show, putt for dough, right? That's the sexy part of the game,
Yeah.
hitting long drives. But it's actually such a small part of the game. If you talk about your driver, I mean, how many times are you actually hitting your driver in an average round, right?
Not many. Yeah.
Not many at all.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about, why are these shoes designed for that specific thing when there's this whole other part of the game?
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for us, is saying, okay, actually, maybe we can look at it a different way. That's what all these other shoes want to market to, is get 3 extra yards on your drive because
Right.
you have all this crazy stuff. But, how did your putting change? How did your short game change?
Yeah.
How did your knees feel at the end of the round? How did your back feel? Where's the longevity in it, right?
Yeah.
So all those things were things that were really important to us when designing the Peluva shoe. What I'm really interested in is, I want to hear, what was your first impression when you stepped into Peluvas?
Yeah, so backtrack just a little bit, like some of the things you just mentioned, I think it's interesting, and I've always wanted to do this. Somebody came to me as a new golfer, you're pretty new, and they said, I really want to get good at golf. I am a believer in metrics and in stats, so here's one. All of us on the planet that play golf, we take 75% of our shots from 60 yards and less. That's a fact. Now, that stat is skewed, like most statistics, because some of those are tap-in putts.
Right.
Okay, so let's say we take 70% of our shots from 60 yards and less. What clubs are you using when you take, from 60 yards and less? Your putter.
Yeah.
And a wedge or two.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the putting real quick. We've talked about that. We see so much now, and it's been around, it's older than old Tom Morris. People have been reading putting greens with their feet for over 200 years, right? And now we have aim point, which is a great kind of refined technique to do that. But basically, at the end of the day, we're reading the green with our feet.
Yeah.
Now, it's a heck of a lot easier to read the green or sense the slope on the green with your feet when your feet are, a couple things. Your toes are spread out. Your feet are close to the grass and the ground.
Yeah.
And you're not wearing stilettos or high heels,
Right.
which we talked about earlier today. Like, why are we all walking around with a lot of, heel rise pushing us onto our toes? Because that's the way shoes have always been made.
Yeah, and it's basically just a fashion statement that's carried on.
So we accept it, but instead of questioning it and using critical thinking and wondering, wow, I wonder if this is right for me or good for me, we just let it go. So I think that's a performance part. And then back to, hey, I really want to get good at golf. Hitting a good, tee shot is important.
Yeah.
So if I could get somebody as a teacher good with a driver, good with a putter, and good with a wedge, I got a world beater.
Right.
So if we're wearing footwear that doesn't compromise anything from the tee,
Yeah.
right, you're not going to lose accuracy nor distance.
Right.
Yet that piece of footwear is enhancing my ability to read greens. Is that important for putting? It's incredibly important. It's not the end all, but it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Might the Peluvas help me to some extent with stability in my feet when I'm putting? Yes. Will they help me sense slopes around the greens? And for these partial shots, which again, now we're going back to the, 70% for 60 yards and less.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
Largely. My first experience when a mutual friend of ours sent me a pair to put on, and I told him this, and this was not before we had any kind of agreement.
Yeah.
As soon as I put the footwear on, my entire body felt better.
Right.
And then I have a bit of a leg length discrepancy that normally I have to wear an orthotic with.
Yeah.
But I put the Peluvas on and I started walking around, and my whole system, again, from the ground up, just seemed to be much more at ease.
Yeah.
Like it was happy. My system was happy.
Right.
So, and as we all know, and I don't think anybody will argue that fact, that's the way our feet are designed to be.
Yeah.
We need a little bit of protection because the bottoms of our feet have gotten a little soft.
Yep.
With everything else.
Right.
So if we can have the toes spaced out, not a narrow toe box, we're close to the ground, okay, not wearing high heels.
Right.
Why wouldn't we do that?
And you've touched on it a good amount, but what can footwork really do in terms of changing a player's game, right? So not just talking about the the footwear specifically,
Yeah.
just footwork in general, right? Because I think a lot of times that gets left out of, you know, the importance of a golf swing, right? And you look at someone like Scotty Scheffler, who has just insane footwork, right? Like a totally different thing. It makes you realize, wow, there's different ways to go about your swing with strictly, you know, how your weight is planted, how it's shifted, how you transfer it, and and sort of the footwork involved with that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own pattern.
Right.
Scotty's, you know, unique in what he does. His coach, Randy Smith's a dear friend of mine, has been for years. The way he moves his feet in his golf swing is unique. The one thing for sure is most people will do better when their balance is a little better.
Right.
And we know as we age, that balance piece gets worse. And part of that is feeling yourself a little bit more connected to the planet, to the ground. And there's so much footwear out there now that makes you taller. Unfortunately, we're all shrinking, but we don't want to necessarily get taller by wearing, you know, shoes that have a lot of cushion,
Right.
and move our feet away from the ground. So I think the balance aspect, and again, just being able to recognize once we hit it off the tee box and we're walking around on a hilly terrain for the next 4 hours.
Yeah.
I also think it could potentially get people out of the golf cart. Like I always tell people, like I love to walk and I've always loved to walk. And then I ran for a long time playing golf. I will get in a cart when I can't walk anymore. But until then, I'm going to walk.
Right.
And I guess, you know, I'm old, but I still got a few more decades in front of me where I plan on walking.
Yeah.
And that becomes, when we see this with elderly people, the only thing they can do later in life, their triathlon is walking.
Yes.
And so, again, it's so important to get people moving and walking and getting connected to the ground in some way and making sure that their balance is what it needs to be, whether they're playing golf or just walking around the block.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point because walking, you know, we talk about it, right? And maybe for you, walking is something that is, let's say, more accessible, or it's what you're going to do.
Take it
for people my age, right? It's like walking's too slow. Why would I want to walk or whatever, right? But there's really an element to, I mean, there's a beauty to it. There's a meditation to it, walking a golf course, right? And that's something that I think probably most of my peers don't walk. It's just, that's where the game's gone, right? It's like, hey, we're taking a cart, we're speeding it up, let's go. You know, what I actually notice, which is fascinating when I do walk, is I actually play the game better.
Yeah.
It allows me to really get involved in each shot. As I walk up to the shot, I'm paying attention to all the different factors. It really keeps me in the game versus riding. It's like, okay, now we're out of the game and we're driving. Okay, we're driving. Okay, we're back in the game, right?
Yeah.
And there is a little bit of a disconnect where it feels like the you know, there's just,
it's an allied work.
Yeah, and not only the losing focus in golf by doing something else. Maybe I'm sitting in the passenger in a cart and now looking at my phone and whatever, and
you're sitting. Right. It's just really important too. And nobody's going to say sitting's good for you. Like sitting, you know, the trendy thing is the new smoking. So when you're in a cart, you're also sitting.
Right.
And you're in a bit of a time warp because instead of it taking 5 to 7 minutes or so to walk to your next shot, now you're there in, you know, 5 to 7 seconds.
Yeah.
So back to what you said about it, just the walking aspect of it, and then getting a feel for the golf course and your next shot as you're walking up there. Plus, not to get too esoteric here, but you know, the Buddha would often meditate while he was walking. It is a meditative thing.
Yes.
It is movement. And we know that when the body is moving, the brain is normally in more balance itself. It's in harmony.
Yeah.
As opposed to sitting right away back in the golf cart and then rushing, if you will, like we do through life now.
Exactly.
And boom, all of a sudden you're upon your next shot. You know, one of the great things I experienced with speed golf is if I'd hit a bad shot, and I hit a lot of them, I wouldn't have much time to stew on the next one because I will be at my next shot quickly.
Yeah.
Sometimes that space in between shots, especially after a bad shot in a round of golf, that time is necessary in order for you to process some things so that the next shot isn't too quick.
Right.
And then you can proceed accordingly. So again, I mean, that's more encouraging people to walk for whatever reason.
Yes.
But again, if you're going to walk, you better have something that's functional
yes.
on your feet. that's comfortable.
Absolutely.
And then heaven forbid, if it improves your efficiency, effectiveness, and overall performance, and then you're not dying to take them off
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's the other thing. People are like, oh, I couldn't wait to take these shoes off at the end of the day. That's always a bad sign.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to hear from our customers is, you know, it's sort of the testimonial of I get home at the end of the day and I don't just instantly think of taking my shoes off. You know, I forget to take my shoes off or something along those lines.
Yes.
Really the experience that we're trying to deliver. I want to talk a little bit about balance, and, you know, we've touched on it, how balance is so important because the golf swing itself is such an unconventional movement. And the fact that it ended up with the current golf swing and somehow it got figured out, you know, it's kind of crazy to me as an athlete and playing a lot of different sports where a lot of this stuff is a little more intuitive. Golf is not necessarily intuitive. All right, you give like a really good athlete a golf club and just don't give them any instruction, they come up with some crazy swings that maybe aren't conventional.
Yeah.
And part of hitting this little ball, you know, hundreds of yards
Stationary.
yes, is having really great balance. So how many I guess, is balance an issue for, you know, beginners at golf? Like, talk to me a little bit about, is it something, you know, I haven't interacted with too many true beginners, but do you find that a lot of them are able to sort of stay centered, stay balanced over the ball, or are they sort of like swinging and falling over, losing balance? What is that like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of new players, especially if they're older, Kyle, that maybe struggle in there, drifting all over the place. But honestly, a lot of it's because the foot has become weak and the ankle is immobile.
Right.
And I am certainly not an anatomy specialist nor a movement specialist, but I do know this. Our feet are designed to be strong and stable.
Yeah.
Our ankles are designed to be mobile. And it's all backwards now because we wear poor footwear and we sit a lot. Right. So now people have weak feet and their toes are smashed together and immobile ankles.
Yeah.
That's a disaster for a functional golf swing. So new players are kind of all over the place. I think eye-hand coordination is super important. Like if you took a group of 10 new players and you gave them all the same information, the ones that excel, if you tested their eye-hand coordination, have better eye-hand coordination than the ones that don't. So with that, we know that, again, this brain-foot connection is really strong.
Right.
So I think the more in tune people can get with where their feet are in space, the proprioception aspect that we talked about. And then back to golf. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's not logical. It was invented by drunken Scottish shepherds that were basically whacking stones around with sticks because they're not bored.
Right.
So everything about the stick that you have to hit the small stationary golf ball with is odd.
Yes.
Right. Once you understand the physics and the geometry of it, it makes a ton of sense. That still doesn't mean you can do it.
Right.
But it is all, the ball behaves. I always tell people, I'm in the golf ball behavior business. People come to see me because their golf ball is not behaving the way they want.
Right.
It's not going far enough. It's not going straight enough. It's not going, the proper distance.
Right.
And so how do I make that better?
Yeah.
I think the equipment, and I think one of the odd things in the golf business is that we've dialed everything in. People can get fit for clubs, fit for golf balls, but people really have not pursued getting fit for golf shoes.
Sure.
And what's going to work ideally for them. And what kind of golfer are they? Are they a long drive person? Do they ride? Do they walk?
Yeah.
What do they need? What do they want?
Right.
So that's important. I also think, and we know this, you guys have known this since day one, a lot of people are going to say, I'm never going to wear that shoe because it looks funny.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back a few years in golf. So it wasn't that long ago that everybody wore wool jackets and ties to play golf.
Right.
So if we went out today, we're going to go back out here in a little while, and wore that, people would just stare at us.
Yeah.
Now, I got stared at a lot playing speed golf because I was a guy that was running around the golf course.
Right.
So I got used to it. Equipment. It wasn't that long ago that all of the metal clubs were made out of wood.
Right.
And then even some of the clubs we have, if you look at old putters, there weren't these giant mallets.
Yep.
They weren't these, spaceships that were, toasters on the end of a stick.
Yeah.
Well, now that's just commonplace.
Right.
So I'm just put up, what if at some point, 50 years from now, everybody has footwear where their toes are properly spaced.
Yeah.
Their feet are close to the ground, and we're not wearing high heels. And that was just the norm. It's possible.
Right. And that's our goal. That's our goal, is to not let the aesthetic that we're used to dictate the function that we need. Out of
100%.
right?
And I think real quick, back to the putting thing, people remember this, but ping putters and revolutionized the game. And most of Scotty Cameron's stuff are a little bit of a knockoff of what Karsten Solheim. So Karsten Solheim, who founded the Ping Company, this is not a plug for Ping, but they make great equipment. And it's interesting. It's an R&D company first and foremost, and then they do golf. So Karsten showed up. He was an engineer, right? And he was a funny looking guy, and he went out on tour, and he was the first person to design a putter head that had weight in the toe and the heel, right? Well, he went out there, and the tour players laughed at him. Mm-hmm. They said, "What is that? It looks like a plumbing tool. You stick that in your toilet when it's clogged up?"
Yeah.
Karsten didn't say anything. He said, "Try."
Yeah.
And he just handed it to him.
Right.
And they went out there because there was no heel-toe weighting, which stabilizes the putter head and this putter face if you hit it off center, which we all do.
Right.
Well, guess what? It worked really well.
Yeah.
Right. And so now we look at that putter and we're like, yeah, but it's a big deal. It's a heel-toe weighted putter. It's been around forever. It hasn't been around forever.
Right.
And so things are always shifting, whether it's apparel, whether it's equipment, whether it's footwear.
Yeah.
So, and at the end of the day, here's what golfers want. They want to play better.
Right.
And so they will sacrifice whatever to some extent. They sacrifice a lot of money on bogus things that may not actually improve in performance.
Right.
So if something can help them with the performance standpoint and the comfort standpoint, and heaven forbid, let's say it gets them back to walking a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a cool scenario.
Absolutely. So talking about sort of new things emerging in golf, right? Minimalist shoes, this idea of minimalist shoes, it's been around, we could say probably 15 years. It's sort of been a growing movement, definitely in running and the fitness area. It's sort of started to make its way into golf a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess over the past, call it the past decade, have you heard much about minimalist shoes in golf, or what have you heard around footwear in golf?
Yeah, for sure. That it's come more into vogue.
Yep.
And it's funny, things go from fashion to function and then back and forth. But we've seen some stuff that's like uber minimalist.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's nothing down there at all. So there's no lateral stability is something that is important for golf swing. There's no question. So that you're not moving sideways too much. And some of the minimalist stuff that came out, there wasn't enough there. Our footwear, the Peluva golf shoes, there's enough lateral stability and there's enough traction on the bottom that's not going to happen.
Right.
So, but then we still see the really clunky, heavy, overly firm, ankle restricting sort of footwear.
Yeah.
Where I guess if you're just going to stand and hit golf balls on an artificial mat and see how far you can hit it, might be okay.
Right.
But heaven forbid, if you're going to go walk or play golf and you need something that's a little more versatile, that's just it. Like you said earlier, golf is it's an adventure. It's like a Disneyland-esque adventure that's waiting to happen in the middle of a park. That's what a game of golf is. And you better be ready for it in every aspect.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point about these 70% of these shots being hit within 60 yards, which, that's where we feel like the Peluvas can really help.
Yeah.
I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but the other day I played around and half of my strokes were putts, right? So imagine if I could, and look, I got a lot of things to learn in putting, but I will say my putting did actually used to be worse, and now I'm getting a better feel and a better read and from Peluvas. Now I'm able to hit the ball, or I'm able to read the green pretty well. It's just my ability to hit the ball on a line isn't what I would like it to be. But, just focusing on that 70% of shots inside of 60 yards, which is I think what you said.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of improvement for anyone's game if they're looking to shave strokes.
Yes.
So we're not saying Peluva is going to be the thing to do it, but it's definitely going to give you a different perspective on what those shots could look like when you, need more balance, need more feel when you're talking about these feel shots, half wedge shots and stuff like that. So, Peluva can definitely add something to your game in that regard, while becoming a much more comfortable shoe.
And I think with those shots too, think about it. Like there's so many things we always like to compare to the best in the world. Yeah. So we say, well, Scotty does this and Rory does that and Hovland does this and blah, blah, blah. So from 60 yards and less, anybody on the planet could be as good as a tour player because it doesn't take strength or huge mobility. It takes some skill.
Yeah.
And it takes time and reps. And I throw in a little talent that would help.
Sure.
Now, if somebody said, I really want to drive it like Rory. No, that's not going to happen. Sorry. Yeah. Most of the people on the planet physically cannot move that way.
Right.
But if you look back to these 60 yards and less, whatever that may be, most humans could get better at that without necessarily going to the gym. Okay. They need better technique. And then back to the putting and the footwear side of it. Are you able to sense the slopes around the green? I see so many amateurs, they're not aware. They'll hit a shot and I'll say, did you notice that you were on a slight downhill line? No.
Yeah.
Well, why weren't you? Well, I couldn't feel it. Or nobody brought it to my attention, which is my job as the teacher. Okay. And then again, misread putts, are a huge thing. Back to aim point, which is kind of brought to everyone's attention the importance of reading the green with your feet. And you can take it to whatever level you want, but it's just another tool in your kit because, as I always tell people, if you're a bad green reader, you got two options: either get better or hire a caddy who's really good.
Right. Because
you will not putt better if you are a poor green reader. That's a must. That's a fundamental of putting better.
Right.
I don't think anybody would refute that. So, and then just being more aware in general, of the different subtleties on a golf course. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I'm spoiled because I played for so long and I grew up playing on a super hilly golf course. So I'm super aware of it and I know what kind of adjustments I need to make.
Yeah.
But in fairness, most people, they're ignorant and they're unaware. And I hate to say it, but a lot of it's because of their footwear. They're so disconnected, from the ground.
Right.
That they don't have a chance.
Right.